So, it seems that by the summer, whether I'm working or not again, we will be having 16 hours of wrestling. Now, I know if you follow Alex, just Alex, on his Alex's World Facebook and his Twitter, that he basically said it's 14. Now, for the shows that you have access to, if you will, in a sense, then yes, that is true. You have about 14 hours of wrestling. But there is one show he forgot to include, and that is Impact on Access TV and Twitch, I believe, and YouTube on the YouTube page as well, the membership page, if you will. But yeah, if you add Impact to that, and you even add 1 hour of MLW on Tuesday nights on Reels, if you have that channel on your cable package, you have basically 17 hours worth of wrestling. That's a lot to consume. Now, of course, everybody's primary watching for wrestling, if it comes down to it, will be indeed 3 hours of Raw, potentially 2 hours of SmackDown, the 2 hours of Dynamite, and mostly the 2 hours of Rampage. But why do I say that we're going to have about 16 to 17 hours in reality when you get down to it? Well, quite simply, it's mainly because of the fact that come this summer, according to reports, we are going to get a new 2-hour AEW show on Saturday nights called Collision. Now, the rumored time frame for Collision is going to be at the old 6:05 time slot on TBS, mostly, or TNT, one of the two. Now, if you add that into the equation, you have about, like I said, 16 to 17 hours of wrestling content. Now, if you also want to add in from a technical standpoint, if you watch it, depending on where you can find it, if you add in WoW superheroes, if you will, the late night primetime syndicated block on the Paramount CBS channels or associated syndicated channels, then you have in total 18 hours of wrestling content. But then, if you add in at the end of May or towards the end of May, Dark Side of the Ring, if you will, if you add that to the equation, then you're looking at 19 hours of wrestling content, as a whole. 18 hours of in-ring action, if you want to look at it that way, as well as 1 hour of, documentary storytelling of, certain wrestlers and events that occurred in the past that have some kind of a dark secret to them. And yeah, that is a lot of wrestling content to consume. It is. I'm not going to deny that. It is definitely a lot of wrestling content. Again, you have, from what Alex is already noting, from a primary perspective, Raw, 3 hours, NXT, 2 hours, Dynamite, 2 hours, 2 hours of Ring of Honor, apparently, on Honor Club. You have SmackDown for 2 hours. You have an hour of Rampage and potentially 2 hours of Collision. But like I said, if you look at it from, an expanded, more, associated perspective, you have more hours than that. You add in MLW, that gives you basically 15 hours of MLW. You add in WoW, if you will, you have basically about, I would say, more than that. You have 16 hours. You add in the documentary of Dark Side of the Ring, you have 17 hours. You have a lot of content. There is no doubt. You have a lot of content. You add in Impact, like I said, to that, and you have 19 hours in total. But then again, there are other programs as well. Other wrestling-related programs, if not shows, out there as well. And we have to take that into consideration, too. You have to take that into consideration, too. Like, there are syndicated blocks out there. There are syndicated blocks out there of programming. I mean, if I'm going to be honest with you, you know, if I'm going to be honest with you, you are looking at potentially, in the span of 1 week, if you add in everything I've mentioned, and I've just noticed right now that Alex also mentioned them as well, but he didn't say, well, like the hour time slot and all that, like he did with the others. But if you add in all of everything that I've mentioned, including a few others out there as well, and basically within the span of a week's time, you have a whole day's worth of content. Yeah. You have nearly a whole 24 hours worth of content in the span of a week. Not just the in-ring perspective, like I've said and others have said. No, you also have Dark Side of the Ring and other shows as well related to wrestling, like Tales from the Territories and other stuff. Not to mention, on top of that, you have the streaming service with Peacock and the WWE Network on there. You have the possibility of AEW going on to Max in the near future. You have Impact on Demand with Impact Plus and Twitch. I mean, and then of course you have, what is it, Fight TV? You have IWTV. It's like, it's like it's like you have more wrestling than you could ever expect in any lifetime or any generation that I know of. And here's what's interesting. Just like Alex points out, in a way, this is actually a good thing. Because one, if you're not fond of the major wrestling promotions and what they bring to the table, guess what? You have GCW. You have MLW. You have, You have CZW. You have PWG. You have all these shows. You have IWA, if that's your stuff. You have you have All Japan, if that's still a thing. You have Pro Wrestling Noah. You have all of these other, other options out there besides the major 4 or 5, whatever you want to call them, that you know of. And that's the great thing about having all these hours and content of wrestling available to you every week or when you want it. You don't have to rely on just enjoying one thing. You can look at all the other options that are out there. And that is terrific. Whether you're a fan of hardcore deathmatch wrestling, you just want straight shoot style wrestling, strong style wrestling, sports entertainment wrestling, pure pro flips and kicks wrestling, you have your variety. You have your variety out there. And that's a good thing for the business. Because it not only opens the eyes of fans to say, hey, you have other options besides WWE, AEW, Impact, New Japan, and all that. You have all these other options out there available. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing because it has something for everybody. You want to find out more about British wrestling, British strong style wrestling? There's Rev Pro. People can tune into that. The point is we have more wrestling content than we've ever had in any lifetime. Yeah, we've had our local territories, regional territories in the past. Don't get me wrong. But this, believe it or not, does feel like a callback to the territorial days, but on a more grander scale, because now you have streaming services like YouTube here that you're watching this on, Twitch, Daily Motion, Rumble, you name it, VENMO. You have all these other options to view wrestling, not just of the big 4 or 5 that are out there that you know of, but all the other independents as well. You have more of a platform. And by doing this more of a platform, you open the door for maybe, promotions of the past that left, that had to go out of business to maybe have a resurgence or resurrection. The NWA, whether you like how it's structured or not under Billy Corgan, guess what? They've kind of had a resurrection, and people like going there because it is an option of, hey, here's wrestling that gives you a variety of all kinds of things. It still stays true to what the NWA was. The point that I'm getting at in the long run, is although from a major perspective, yeah, we got a lot of wrestling coming our way in the summer, that when you really look at it, the more wrestling, the better. And not just for the talent to find other options to go elsewhere and perform, but more talent, the better for fans to choose other options out there and not just have to rely on the big 4 or 5 that we know of. But yeah, you're looking essentially, if we're going to be real here, if you add everything, if you add everything, together, you add everything together, you are looking at primarily almost 24 hours worth of wrestling content coming this summer. And again, that's not just talking about the main big 4 or 5, major promotions that we know of. I'm talking everything out there. Everything. You're looking at nearly 24 hours worth of wrestling, period, coming this summer. But why is though Collision, going to be a thing? Is there a reason for it? Well, as I end this video, get ready to start another one. Let's talk about that, shall we?